The grove was burning.
Adeze watched it from the riverbank, a leather satchel in one hand, her youngest brother pressed against her hip with the other. And there was nothing she could do but watch. The smoke rose in black columns. The trees she had been raised under, the trees her grandmother had planted, the trees her great-grandmother had walked to 3 times in her life to learn what they could do to a sick body, were gone. Chief Eze had warned her once. He had warned her twice. Then he had stopped warning and started burning. She had told him. She had knelt before his council and explained to him what the grove meant to the village, what the plants could do, what would happen if the soil were opened. He had laughed. He had called her names. And then he had chosen the gold. The morning it had all begun was the kind of morning that lies to you. The sky was pale gold, the kind of sky that makes the world look gentle. Children walked the red paths to fetch water, balancing clay pots on their heads with a joy they did not yet know would be taken from them. Clay roofs caught the light. Somewhere, a mother sang her son to sleep. This was Amagu, a village of 700 souls set between 2 rivers. The elder one the people called Ma, the younger one they called Ezi because it sang. Amagu had been wealthy and steady for as long as memory could carry the story back. Its yams could fill a basket the size of a small child. Its women traded a smoked fish that travelers carried as far as the coast. Its men worked iron so fine that traders from neighboring kingdoms would trade 3 goats for a single hoe blade. It was a village that remembered what it owed to its healers. And it had a healer. The grove they had come for belonged to Adeze. She was 38 years old, tall, with the careful stillness of a woman who had been taught from childhood to listen before speaking. She was the daughter of Onyeka, who had been the daughter of Ezinne, who had been the daughter of a long line of women whose gift it was to know what plants could do to a body and what dreams could do to a spirit. The grove was, in the language of her people, a compound of the spirit. It contained healing plants no other compound in the kingdom held. The soil, fermented under specific moons, could pull poison from a snakebite in hours. A poultice from the leaves of a particular tree could close a wound that would otherwise take a limb. The roots of another plant could bring back the appetite of a child slipping away from a sickness no other healer in the kingdom could name. Adeze had lost her own mother to fever at 19. She had been raised by her grandmother Ezinne, who had taught her to walk through the grove as if she were walking through a house full of sleeping elders. Chief Eze had not always been this way. Old men in Amagu still remembered the young Eze who walked the markets without guards, who once carried a sick neighbor's child on his own back and waited 6 hours while Ezinne worked. The man he had become was something else. There was gold in the eastern hills. Miners had come up the rivers with their picks and their wages. Eze had gone to sea. He had come back, changed. He talked now of water pipes. He talked of cloth that would make his wives shine like the moon. He talked of buildings with iron roofs, and, in quieter councils with his closest advisors, he talked about how much of this could be bought, if only he had more gold. It was his senior advisor, Obina, who first raised the question of the grove. Adeze's grove sits on top of the largest gold vein in the eastern range. The foreign men will pay 1,200 Manila chains for a single quarter acre at the eastern edge of the compound. They promise clean digging. The village will receive enough gold to do everything the chief has dreamed of within a single generation. Adeze was not invited to that meeting. A young woman who worked in the chief's compound told her about it 3 days later. Adeze went to Chief Eze's compound the next morning, before he had taken his morning meal. She stood in the great room and spoke quietly.
The grove is not land. The grove is medicine. The foreign men do not know this,
They have no sickness that has touched their own people, so they believe the plants have no power. But our grandmothers built that grove over 3 generations. They identified the plants. They brought cuttings from distant forests. They learned by trial what each one would do to a sick body. If the foreign men dig the soil, the plants die. If the plants die, the medicine ends. If the medicine ends, people will die of sicknesses they could have survived. Chief Eze listened. Then he spoke. The gold will let me build water pipes for the village. It will let me give your grandmother a new house. It will let me buy iron tools for every farmer in Amagu. And you tell me that all of this is worth less than a patch of plants? He had already made his decision. Adaze saw it in the angle of his jaw. She bowed her head and left the compound. She was given 30 days to consider, but the digging crews arrived on the 10th day. By the 14th day, Adaze was no longer in the village. She had been accused, formally, by Eze's council of being a witch and of plotting to starve the village of its wealth. The accusation had no evidence. Accusations of witchcraft never need evidence in villages where fear runs deeper than reason. The only question was whether the witchcraft charge would become a violent one. Eze's younger brother, a more cautious man named Nana, sent word through his wife that Adaze should leave before the moon rose on the 15th night. She knew how to read that warning. Before she left, Adaze went to the grove for the last time. She crushed a leaf from the healing tree and breathed in the smell. She tasted a pinch of the soil on the tip of her finger, as her grandmother had taught her. She knelt by the iroko and pressed both palms against its bark. Then she took what she could carry. From the leather pouch her grandmother had given her when she turned 16, she took 11 seeds from rare plants. From the bark of a younger tree, she shaved carefully a strip that held the medicine for closing wounds. From a clay jar she had hidden in a hollow, she took the powder that could bring a child back from the edge of fever. She took her youngest brother, a boy of 11 named Chika, who had no parents left, who had been living with her since he was 5. She did not take her grandmother, who was 82 and could not survive the journey they needed to make. She kissed her grandmother on the forehead and promised her she would return. She did not look back. Adaze walked for 19 days, south, then east, then south again, into a territory called Mba, controlled by a council of village elders rather than a single chief. When she crossed into it, the first thing she noticed was that people on the roads looked each other in the eye. The second thing she noticed was that no one was selling their children to settle debts. The third thing she noticed was that the elder of the first village she entered, Aura, listened to her story, looked at her satchel, and offered her a small hut at the edge of their own grove. Elder Ngozi asked Adaze 3 questions in the first hour. What do you know? What can you do? What do you want? Adaze answered plainly. I know plants. I can heal sicknesses that other healers cannot name. I want to plant a new grove. Within a year, Adaze had selected 22 plants from the forests around Aura. Within 3 years, she had trained 6 young people, including her brother Chika, in the patient listening her grandmother had called the first healing art. Within 5 years, Aura was receiving patients from neighboring villages. Within 8 years, Aura was receiving patients from 7-day journeys away. Patients came on litters. Patients came in baskets carried by walking relatives. Adaze and her students treated them all. They never turned anyone away. They never asked for payment. Back in Amagu, the pit dug by the foreign men grew wider. By the 2nd year, the pit was a quarry. By the 3rd year, The quarry had reached the water table that fed the eastern wells. By the 4th year, the wells were dry in the dry season. By the 5th year, the wells were dry in both seasons. And by the 7th year, a sickness came to Amagu that no one had seen before. Children stopped wanting food. Their bellies swelled in a strange way. Their hair fell out in patches. Old people who had once walked the markets with strong strides began to move like men whose strength had been quietly stolen from their bones. Chief Eze sent to the foreign men to ask if the digging had anything to do with it. The foreign men told him politely that the digging was clean, that the sickness was local, that he should consult his own traditional healers. Chief Eze had burned out the traditional healers of Amagu when he had accused Adeze. The grove was gone. Most of its plants had been crushed in the digging. The gold had built water pipes and iron roofs and a new compound for Eze's grandmother, who was not even alive to see it. People began leaving Amagu, in 1s and 2s and 4s, the way people always leave, quietly at first, before the leaving becomes a flood that everyone can see. They crossed the river into Mba. They walked the forest path to Ora. They came to Adeze with their children in baskets on their backs. Adeze said nothing about who had caused their suffering. She treated their children. She gave them water. She invited them to settle in the villages nearby if they had no home to return to. By the end of 2 years, more than 4,000 families had crossed into the Eastern Territories. And the elder council of the Federation that governed Mba began to ask questions that needed answers. It was Elder Ngozi herself who brought Adeze the formal invitation. "The council has asked to see you. They have received many reports from across the river. They have discussed for 3 months. They have decided that you are the one best placed to speak about what happened in Amagu." Adeze stood before the council of 9 elders in the great hall of Mba. She did not raise her voice. She did not seek pity. When she finished, the hall was silent. Elder Ngozi leaned forward. "You are accusing a chief of another territory. You are asking us to open a council action against a chief who once ruled you and who exiled you. We must ask, do you believe this is right?" Adeze looked at the elder. "I do not believe in punishment," she said. "I believe in ending suffering. The chief caused suffering that is now spreading beyond his territory. If nothing is done, more children will die. His neighbors will suffer. His children's children will suffer. That is why I am here." The council decided to send a delegation. 3 of the 9 elder council members traveled with Adeze, with Chika, and with 2 of Adeze's senior students. They walked back through the forest, back across the rivers, back to a village Adeze had not seen in 7 years. The grove she had left was a quarry now. The trees were gone. The soil was bare. The place where her grandmother had planted the first iroko was a pit filled with stagnant water. Chief Eze received them in his great hall, which was a fine hall now, with stone walls and iron roofing, but which smelled, Adeze noticed, faintly of sickness. He had not aged as men age when the years pass kindly on them. He had aged as men age when the years have been quietly working on them, taking things they will not return. It was Obina who first saw Adeze. His face did something small, a tightening around the eyes. The chief did not recognize her for a long moment. She was 7 years older. She wore different cloth. She stood with a different bearing. When recognition arrived, it arrived as the arrival of something the chief had been hoping, in some quiet way, would not. He said nothing. Elder Ngozi spoke first. She spoke about Federation law. She spoke about the obligation of council territories to prevent suffering from spreading across borders. She spoke about a clause in the Federation Charter she had studied for 30 years and had never imagined would be the clause she would invoke. She placed a folder on the floor between the chief and the delegation. The folder contained reports from 4 villages that had received Amagu refugees. The folder contained testimony from 9 witnesses. The folder contained a list, by name, of every child under 10 in the territory of Mba who had died of wasting sickness in the past year. Chief Eze looked at the folder. He asked Obina to read it. Obina did not open it. The chief looked at Obina for a long time. Then he looked at the elders. Then he looked at Adeze. "Say nothing," he said. Obina did not move. "I said, say nothing." Obina stepped back from the chief's side. The chief looked at Adeze. "You have come back," he said. Adeze did not lower her eyes. "I have come back for the sick children," she said. "Not for you." In the month that followed, more families crossed the river. The granaries of Amagu, which the chief had built at the height of his gold years, were emptying. The chief's own children were among the sick. His eldest daughter, a girl of 9 named Amarachi, was the one he carried to Adeze himself. Adeze did not declare victory. She did not make speeches. She asked for clean water. She asked for a quiet room. She asked for 2 of her students. She asked for Amarachi to be placed on a clean mat with no clothing above her waist. She asked for her satchel. She took from the satchel a small quantity of the bark she had saved 7 years earlier. She crushed it into a paste. She mixed the paste with water. She painted a thin line along the child's spine, then along the lines of her ribs, then along the soles of her feet. She covered the child with a light cloth. She told the chief to wait. She told him to leave the child alone. She told him to come back in 3 hours. When he returned, Amarachi was sitting up. Her belly was less swollen. She asked for the roasted plantain her mother had been trying to give her for 2 weeks, and which she had refused every time. The chief knelt. He did not know he was kneeling. His knees simply bent. He stayed in that position for a long time, his hands pressed flat against the floor, his head bowed, his breathing slow. Adeze stood across the room from him. She did not move to comfort him. She did not move to condemn him. She waited until he raised his head. "You sold what could not be sold," Adeze said. "You were warned. You were told what the medicines did. You were told what the plants meant to this village. You chose the gold because you wanted to be seen as a builder." The chief nodded. "And what you built," Adeze said, "will not outlast what you destroyed. There will be more sick children. The water will not come back. The bones of your village will not be put back together. The plant you just saw act on your daughter took 3 generations to grow. It will not grow back in your compound. It cannot grow back in the soil of a quarry." The chief lowered his head again. Obina was removed from his position by the Federation Council. The chief agreed without argument. 2 of his other advisors resigned. The chief agreed to open Amagu to a Federation agricultural recovery program. He agreed to accept compensation terms for the families who had crossed into the Eastern Territories. He agreed to convene a new governance structure for Amagu that would include elected elders with direct authority over land and medicine. Adeze did not stay in Amagu. She returned to Ora. She continued her work. Her brother, Chika, who was 28 now, ran the Federation's regional seed library. Her students had opened small healing groves of their own in 9 villages across the Federation. She was 52 years old. She rose before the sun. She laid down after it. These things had not changed, because they did not need to. The chief, who had everything, had not understood what everything cost. The healer, who had nearly nothing, had understood, from the very beginning, what everything was worth. And the seeds she had carried out of exile, those ordinary, extraordinary seeds, became the cures that saved a kingdom, the foundation of a school, and the quiet proof that the earth remembers what it gives, and it remembers who it takes from. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe and click the bell, because every story we tell is for you.